Hi, it's Danielle and along with Jenny Fallnews, we are going to be filming your experiences on your own number 4, Inner Harbor. So here we are in Inner Harbor, the new downtown of Baltimore. As you can see, there are many shops, museums, and cultural points of interest. Inner Harbor has been completely revitalized over the last half-century. As we learned in class, this was the result of much urban planning. The design committees over the years helped shape the way Baltimore is today and how we now enjoy it. My favorite attraction down here is definitely the aquarium. And the mall is always a treat. But today I'm excited for my first trip around Baltimore's water taxi. So it's a windy December day in 2010. We are going to try to imagine Baltimore in the 19th century. While there wouldn't have been a water taxi, Baltimore was one of America's busiest shipping ports and shipbuilding cities. Stopping at several of the more significant sites will help us see how life must have been over 100 years ago. Let's pretend we are aboard an old ship coming into a harbor. Our stops today will include the Frederick Douglass Museum and the Maritime Park. Let's board! So before we board the water taxi, I'd like to give you some history and overview of what it does. As you can see in this map, the water taxi circles around the entire Baltimore harbor, everywhere from Fort McHenry to Canton to the Inner Harbor itself. The water taxi has been operating for over 25 years and has served an estimated 16 million passengers. The water taxi is a great opportunity for a ride through Baltimore's harbor to get up close to some of its more hidden attractions. Highlights include the National Aquarium, Fells Point, Little Italy, the Science Center, Fed Hill, Harbor East, Canton, Maritime Park. So unfortunately the water taxi is not in operation today due to high winds and a storm advisory. As you can see, everything's whipping, and this reminds us of an old Baltimore day in the 19th century when shippers would have to go to sea with the high winds and storm advisory. But we will continue our tour of Inner Harbor and Fells Point, so we'll keep you posted. But instead of taking the water taxi, we will instead give you a photo tour of the Inner Harbor. Here you have the World Trade Center, an observatory. Here you have commercial space redesigned from an old 1900 Baltimore factory. Here you have a park with harbor views. And here's Pratt Street and Market intersection. Now we'll have a historic look at the harbor. Here's 1800s Light Street. Here's the oyster fleet at Pratt Street Port. Clearly Baltimore was much more industrial. And here's Light Street seen from Key Highway. Much different than it is today.
We finally made it to the Frederick Douglass and Isaac Myers Maritime Park. As you can see, here's the museum where we'll go in afterwards to look at some of the galleries. Here you can see part of the Green Railroad that's still intact. Here is where, in Fells Point, Frederick Douglass was a slave in the early 1800s, and he worked for his owner as a ship caulker.
Frederick Douglass went on to escape slavery and gain independence in New York, where he made large contributions to the black suffrage movement. At the same time that Frederick Douglass was working as a ship caulker at Fells Point, Isaac Myers was born. Unlike Douglass, Myers wasn't enslaved and was able to enjoy freedom in the Inner Harbor, where at a young age he was hired to supervise one of the largest shipyards in Baltimore's harbor. In 1865, though, only months after the Civil War had ended, white ship caulkers working in the harbor put down their tools and walked off the job, motivated by the economic stress of decreasing jobs, which was a direct result of the fact that Fells Point wharves were becoming too small for many of the new, bigger steamships. The white workers vowed to return to work only after black caulkers had been fired. While changing attitudes following the Civil War encouraged ship owners to take into consideration black workers' rights, the loss of business forced the ship owners to fire most of their black workers. In response, Isaac Myers, along with a few other ship workers, including some white workers, began to develop a black-operated shipyard after raising the $10,000 necessary to lease property. The men leased an existing shipyard at the corner of Philpott and Point Streets, located right on the water, and started the Chesapeake Marine Railway and Dry Dock Company. Business growth was promising during its first several months when the company won a number of lucrative government contracts. At one point, the company's payroll included nearly 200 employees. Despite initial business growth, by the end of the second decade, rapid turnover among management and workers began to take its toll on the company. The 1880s brought about the rise of larger wooden ships and steel-hulled ships, and the Chesapeake Marine Railway and Dry Dock Company could accommodate neither. Finally, in 1884, the leaseholders declined to renew with the company, and management had no choice but to close ship. Given the circumstances of its beginnings and the context of the times, the almost 20-year run of the company was impressive. The Chesapeake Marine Railway and Dry Dock Company symbolized the possibilities of the day as the nation attempted to leave slavery behind. Black workers had been able to protect their old economic turf and had proven their proficiency in all manner of labor. Isaac Myers, in playing a leadership position in the formation of the Chesapeake Marine Railway and Dry Dock Company, helped forge a new political identity for African Americans in the changing times following the Civil War. Myers went on to further help forge an identity for African Americans by organizing the Colored Labor Union, the first large-scale national entity of black workers. The Frederick Douglass Isaac Myers Maritime Park captures the impact that both Douglass and Myers had on African American independence and educates all visitors of this impact. The park also maintains parts of the Marine Railway and allows visitors to see a first-hand view of how the Marine Railway worked by lifting ships out of the water so that they could be repaired before going off to make more shipments. We were also able to take a look in the Maritime Park's boat shop, which replicates a typical boat shop and helps maintain the frame that is on display on the Marine Railway. While unable to take photos within the museum, we were able to see the many galleries that included historic maps and images dating back to the times of Douglass and Myers, as well as some historic artifacts that informed us about the African American heritage that was developed through the maritime activities that took place in this very area.
Just like the fire today, the Baltimore fire of 1904 had its own aftermath. Like the previous photo, this picture shows the same street intersection as before. This is looking onto Baltimore Street. As you can see, Baltimore continuously deals with disasters like this. Despite the fire uptown, we still managed to make it to Fells Point. Fells Point is one of the several areas in and around Baltimore that is listed on the National Register of Historic Districts, and the first for Maryland. Fells was founded in 1730 by William Fell, who was attracted by its vast deep water and its close proximity to agriculture and thick forests. Soon enough, Fells Point became the shipbuilding and commercial center of Baltimore. Today, Fells Point is one of the most lively parts of the city, featuring world-class restaurants, hundreds of pubs and bars, and a bumping nightlife. It lays claim as the home neighborhood for several groups of immigrants, including Polish, Irish, and Puerto Rican peoples. Nevertheless, Fells retains its charming characters through its cobblestone streets and historic architecture, as seen in the row homes, shops, and docks. And here's Jenny standing in front of one of Fells Point's historic markers, marking it as one of the National Register of Historic Districts. As you can see in the background, there are many pubs and shops that line these several streets. Fells Point has continued to be a bustling neighborhood full of pubs, shops, and entertainment. And finally, we arrive at the Wharf Rat, a pub located in Fells Point. This pub certainly catches the spirit of what life might have been like for sailors and pirates in this harbor town. In fact, Wharf Rat means a seafarer, pirate, or privateer in 18th century lingo. The Wharf Rat stands in an old 1700s building and is supposedly haunted by some of its old patrons. Many duels, murders, and fights have taken place there. Maybe we will even have our own ghost sighting. We will let you know about our experience and dinner once we are out.